Good evening, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to be conducting another episode of Dhammapariyesanā, day 25. In today's topic, we're going to be discussing about the connection between self-awareness and empathy. So, if I name the topic in clear terms, it is why self-awareness is the first step toward empathy. So there is a huge connection between self-awareness and empathy. So this topic is something very interesting because it has links and it has a lot of connections to other spiritual concepts and ideas. So that's why we need to look at this connection. And also empathy. Empathy is a smaller version of compassion. But initially, someone can be empathetic, and that empathy can be elevated or developed to an extent of compassion. So today, I invited a guest. I'm very pleased to introduce Madhu to our discussion, and she has a background of arts. She earned her studies from two institutions. She studied from Studio 58 for Theatre Conservatory, and she also got a postgrad in copywriting at Humber College, Toronto. So Studio 58 Theatre Conservatory is from Vancouver, and she has a good background about arts and especially spiritual ideas. I think spirituality is not limited to someone who is, on the spiritual path, especially on a spiritual background. It is a common subject to everyone. So before I jump on to asking questions from Madhu, I would like to give a sort of a background for the topic today. The self-awareness and empathy. We basically know self-awareness is, getting to know oneself in specific, clear terms, especially when it comes to knowing oneself, becoming oneself more, is self-awareness, and empathy is trying to understand what other people are going through, is basically empathy. But there are other ways to understand these two contexts. Madhu is a good example, and she will share with us how she is going to look at those two. We know that once we become more aware of what makes us who we are better able to understand the differences between ourselves and others and what makes them who they are. So it's like, by definition, what we can say is that there is a dichotomy. The dichotomy is that when you become more aware of yourself, you also become more aware of others. So what we can see is that even though empathy is a different word, but empathy looks like others awareness. So you are self-aware about you, and empathy, by definition, if you can take a closer look at of the meaning, you can clearly understand it is knowing others. So this is what we're going to be looking at, and we also know that self-awareness and empathy, they are considered to be the two main pillars of the psychological term called emotional intelligence. So it's like the direct counterpart to self-awareness. So self-awareness and empathy go hand in hand. Okay, Madhu, my first question to you today, as you can see our topic, what is self-awareness to you?
First off, thank you for having me on here. I appreciate that.
Thank you for accepting the invitation.
So what is self-awareness to me? To me, it's a sense of introspection. It's the difference between acting from a place of reaction or reacting versus a place of response where I'm aware of my feelings, my thoughts, my values, my actions, and I'm objectively looking at myself and responding from there so that I'm not lashing out from the wound. And instead, I'm able to thoughtfully choose my response.
Can we ever fully know ourselves? I mean, this is a complicated question, right? I mean, knowing oneself is the hardest thing. We think that we can see ourselves even by practicing self-awareness. So, I mean, I know from Buddhism, self-awareness is what exactly the Buddhism talks about. The Buddha asks us to look within rather than look outside to find the meaning of your life. For example, once he said to someone who was looking at the bigger meaning of life, that I tell you, the real world exists within you. Now we think the real world is outside. There are continents and people, countries, and everything. So it looks to me that the main idea behind the Buddhist purpose to understand the real life is looking within, and that means it's a huge amount of self-awareness, it's a practice of self-awareness. So although we know it's a kind of a challenging thing, but as you said, that it is kind of a great endeavor that if you could do, right? So I also saw in my search that there are two types of self-awareness things. So one is internal self-awareness, while the other thing is external self-awareness. So internal self-awareness is the same thing that we already talked about. So we're trying to become more aware about ourselves in terms of responses, not in the form of reactions, right? So because we naturally react to people, things, and then we are into troubles. But we are supposed to respond with awareness, looking at what it is and what am I going to respond to that particular person event. On the other hand, external self-awareness looks to me that you are kind of concerned about how other people view you. Not that you are trying to put your perspective onto them, but you are concerned about other people, because if you think you are doing a bad thing, then you look at that bad thing through other people, or other people get really uncomfortable if I do this. So that is that is the twofold nature of self-awareness. Looks to us that there are elements to empathy, because if you are concerned about how other people look at you, that means you're concerned about what other people experience because of your behavior, because of your attitude, because of your reactions. So my next question to you, Madhu, what are the benefits that you see by practicing self-awareness in your own experiences again?
Yeah. First off, I'd like to acknowledge what you said. I agree. You can never truly know yourself, and it is a lifelong journey. And so even for me, every single day, I discover more and more and more and more. And I think that's the beauty of it. The advantage that I see in self-awareness is the deeper we know ourselves, the more kind and compassionate we can be externally to others. When I'm able to understand why I'm acting or reacting from a place of fear or hurt or anger or jealousy, and getting to the root of that and examining the thoughts and examining the beliefs behind it, I'm also able to understand why somebody else may come from a place of anger or may come from a place of hurt or sadness, and really be able to be empathetic in that sense. And yes, circling back to what you said, I agree. There is a level of perspective taking that is very inherent in all of this, and the ability to look at a situation through someone else's eyes and walk a mile in their shoes, I think it's quite precious. And that perspective taking is what allows us to be human and allows us to connect with each other. I may not have the exact same experience you've had, but by virtue of being human, I am able to imagine myself in that scenario and relate deeply. So that's what I see.
That's great. And Madhu, I also see there are two ways about looking at or practicing self-awareness, other than those two main differences, like internal and external self-awareness. Now, when I think that when I recognize the ways that I am similar to others, I might perhaps develop a certain thinking that I want to project my perspective onto others. So, I mean, that self-awareness, let's say it is internal self-awareness, and also when we look at empathy, I mean, external self-awareness, what I understand is I recognize that other people, the ways that are, the other people are different in terms of thinking, attitude, belief. So I accept that there are differences too. So I think this twofold division of self-awareness is that we are trying to understand the people who are similar with our ideas and everything, and also the people who are not similar, who are different from ourselves. So that is what we understand by empathy. So it's like, because we know that not everyone will agree with us. There are people who are thinking differently. And for example, I would say some people think that I am good in a certain way, and they think others should be good in the same way too. But actually what happens is we are differently good, or we may be differently bad. So understanding these two have elements to connections to self-awareness in terms of internal self-awareness and external self-awareness. That's great, Madhu. And what about ways to what about steps that someone can take to become self-aware? What are the simple techniques that they can do, in their daily life?
Oh, that's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
The short
What are you doing for that? What are your simple techniques, practices?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I truly believe that you cannot grow in a vacuum. And for growth to occur, there needs to be friction. And that may mean friction with people who think differently or situations that challenge you. So it's essentially stepping out of the quote unquote comfort zone into a growth zone. And then that becomes a learning zone where when you're in a situation that's uncomfortable or you're with someone that may think differently from you, it's not inherently bad, because that is such a subjective qualification of it. The situation just is. So I think it's important in such a situation to be very present and mindful with your feelings, asking yourself.
So one thing is mindfulness, meditation. Let's say mindfulness through meditation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not so much meditation for me personally. For me, it's more so I'm very connected to my body. My undergrad is in theater, really learned that body-mind connection. So, for example, where does anger sit in my body? Where does sadness sit in my body? And really recognizing and naming that feeling and sitting with it. Because I think as a culture, sometimes we want to get away from those negative feelings or those yucky feelings. But I think it's important because those feelings are guideposts. And so sitting with that feeling, examining the beliefs behind those feelings, examining the thoughts that arise from those feelings, and just sitting with it, not in a place of judgment. But I suppose this is like dynamic meditation, where in meditation you don't judge the thoughts that flow through your mind. You just sit with it and you observe. And from there, the more you reflect, so self-reflection, I would say, is definitely a big part of it. the more you reflect, the more you allow space for an insight to come through. So it could be something as simple as, I get triggered when someone says this particular word. And it may be because I have a childhood association with that word. And so acknowledging it, and from there using that as a learning for next time. When someone says that word the next time, then I know that I may not get as triggered, because now I'm aware, and now I'm in this place of empowerment, knowing a little bit more about myself, and I'm able to sit with it instead of it going straight into reaction, so straight into anger, or straight into a sadness.
Great. Can self-awareness be conducive to selfishness in some ways?
See, this
What do you call, how do we draw the line between self-awareness and some forms of selfishness?
Yeah, so I think there's a two-pronged answer to that. First off, there is that idea of, oh, this person is just navel gazing. They're just reflecting and reflecting and reflecting, and I don't see them doing anything else but reflecting, and they're not being a productive member of society. I'm just saying a judgment that may pass through someone's mind. But is that selfish? I don't think that's for anyone else to decide, because at a fundamental level, we get to live our lives the way we choose. And I think you mentioned this earlier, what may be good, quote unquote, to you may not be what's good, quote unquote, to me. What may be bad to you may not be what's bad to me. So I think there is judgment placed upon actions, and yet who is doing the judging? And then the other part of this is that external perspective taking. For example, if you're really able to intuit and guess at someone's reaction to something that you might say, maybe you're really good at reading people, and that would be amazing, because then you can get into that place of empathy. But also, if someone were to project onto that person, and maybe I'm thinking, oh, I really want you to think that I'm kind, so I'm going to act like I'm kind because I want you to think that, but I may not actually be kind. And so there could be a sense of manipulation that arises out of that. But at the end of the day, I think it depends on what kind of person that you are. Am I the kind of person that uses this self-awareness, uses my empathy, uses my ability to walk a mile in someone's shoes? Am I the kind of person that does that to manipulate the other person? Or am I the kind of person that does that to create a stronger bond with that person? And the answer lies here. It's all me. And so I think it's a very person-to-person answer, person-to-person reaction. And I think it's a very personal thing.
Do you think that one has to balance out these two? Because we all kind of selfish in a way, but is there a way that people can do it, like a common advice, common suggestion that this is how I can sort of balance out my selfishness when I practice self-awareness? Because in self-awareness, we are asked to look within, but some people don't know to what extent I'm going to do this. They might sort of project oneself is superior than the other people. I think that's why empathy is important. I think self-awareness and empathy have to go hand in hand, I guess. This is how we can kind of look at the balance here, right? Great. Madhu, what is empathy to you? I know I will explain a little bit from the Buddhist background. What I understand about empathy is that empathy is the smaller version of compassion, because we know in Sinhala we have a word, even in Pali, anukampa, which means that you are trying to look at the suffering or whatever the bad state of life of somebody. You're trying to feel what the other person is suffering or going through. But Compassion is the larger, broader, bigger version of empathy in that sense, because in compassion, it is like you are giving your full-fledged dedication to that person. You're helping with all sort of support, because there are places where we cannot help that much. Maybe it's a matter of somebody, maybe a government, maybe a country, maybe a social issue. We can't do that much. We can do something. So what is empathy to you in your own experience?
Yeah, that was a great answer. I mean, you said it yourself. To me, empathy, I always think about it as walking a mile in someone else's shoes. And that's the long and short of it. I may not be in your position, but I'm able to imagine and put myself in your place, to feel your pain, to feel your joy, to feel whatever it is that you're feeling as if I were feeling it.
Is empathy an innate trait, or something that one has to develop by knowing? Because I see there are people who are naturally what do you call empathetic, but in some cases it's not. What do you think? Is it an innate, bornly thing, or is it something that one has to understand and practice over time? It's empathy. I'm talking about empathy.
Yeah, personally, I think it's an innate trait, but I also think it's a sliding scale. I think some people's brains are wired that they're more empathetic than others, and that's okay. I think it can be developed over time, over the course of our lives. I think it's like any other skill that if you teach your brain to respond in a certain way, you know how they say neurons that fire together wire together. I think over time the brain can learn, but truly I do think it's a sliding scale, and some people are inherently born more empathetic than others, and that's okay. It's just the way it is.
The next question is related to this one. How can one be empathetic? How to become empathetic? What are your practical steps that you experience in your life?
Oh, that's such a hard question. It's so funny.
Sorry about it. Okay, let me add on to
Water.
that question.
Yeah.
I would say, uh, we all are in our comfort zones, and we are not compelled to step out of that comfort zone for different reasons. Ways and means how we've been carrying our life forward. So one of the things that I think people can be empathetic or more empathetic is to step out of your comfort zone by taking a challenge. So it's kind of a challenge, but be careful. We need to be safe. We don't need to put us in danger. By maintaining healthy, safe habits, we can take a challenge to step out of the comfort zone, to think about someone to help. That's one thing. Another thing is being open up for different cultures, different people from different cultures. I think, and become a traveler. And I think the more you travel, the more you understand, the more you are patient to what they say, because when you live in one place for a long time, and if you meet someone from other cultures, other countries, it will take time for us to, understand them, at least to become kind to them, because we think in a certain way. We don't think differently. If we go to different countries, I mean, once when the COVID-19 has finished, so we will get to know a lot of people. At least if we know people from different cultures, we will put our perspective in shape. So stepping out of our comfort zone, and then getting exposed to different cultures and people. uh, and also I can think about you know uh, uh, being curious about knowing others, especially the cultural things, and different things, like now we both from Sri Lankan culture, but we should be also open to knowing other things, like simply because you are a Buddhist, you are not denying other people's celebration, festivals, things, right? So these are kind of things that I have in my mind. I hope that you can share with us. What do you think about it?
Yeah, no, that's so true. It's funny, as you were saying that, I was thinking my partner is from a different culture, and through our conversations and all our interactions, I've really started to notice that I have some thinking biases based on where I was raised. I was raised in Sri Lanka, came here when I was 14. So it's really interesting to acknowledge these cognitive distortions, and um, uh, especially in light of someone who's grown up in a different culture. So yes, absolutely, meeting different people, stepping out of your comfort zone. I think imagination is a big thing too, where, you know, let's say I'm not a heart surgeon, but I can imagine and just truly step into that imagination, truly step into that daydream maybe of what it would be like to be to have someone's life in your hands, what it would, the pressure that I could feel. That's not my reality. However, by virtue of imagination, I'm able to go there. And also, lastly, time. I think the older we get, the more experiences we have. And so naturally, our ego is going to lessen a little bit. And the humbler we get, the more people we meet, the more places we see, empathy naturally develops over time. And so I've met so many incredible seniors who have taught me so much. And just by living and just by experiencing their lives, they've amassed so much wisdom. So time is the biggest one, I would say.
So you certainly believe that time plays a bigger role in becoming more empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So what about someone is to say that I'm still young and I don't think I should cultivate empathy, because someone like you is saying that it takes time, and don't you think that there are other ways to be empathetic too? I mean, I know over time we will be more grounded about things, but just to give a sense of what someone who is starting out his or her life to do about empathy, because nowadays it's a bigger topic across the world. A decade ago or a couple decades ago, mindfulness has been the biggest topic. So we had to stay at present, we had to look at our emotions. But nowadays people are talking about kindness, compassion. People are mindful, but they're becoming more selfish by being mindful. They are not kind to others. They are very they are in a life that they think that we need to emulate other people. So compassion is the uh, you know main goal in many practices. I mean, especially when it comes to new spiritual movements. So I feel like we should be able to find out different ways to tell the younger generation that empathy is a big thing, not even mindfulness. So in addition to that, your point that it takes time. Uh, do you also recognize there are ways to encourage younger generation to be more empathetic? Are there other ways to for them to develop their empathy?
This brings me right back to the topic of this talk. The biggest hack is self-awareness. Like going right back to my humanity and discovering my humanity and where my reactions stem from. And the more I know about myself, the more I can know others. Because at the base level, we are all human and we all share sadness, we all share anger, we all share these basic feelings. And this is from millions of years of evolution. You and I are probably genetically linked in ways which we don't even understand. And which is why empathy is inherent in our species. And so self-awareness really is a way for me to be a better partner, a better colleague, a better daughter, just a way for me to be a better citizen and a better friend and a better me. So, biggest hack, if you don't want to wait 70 years, is be self-aware and work on self-awareness and work at knowing yourself, because you are a wonderful, incredible, deep, amazing human being. And the more you can know yourself, the more you can know other incredible, deep, incredible, amazing human beings. And that when that bond of humanity deepens, that's where love blossoms. And really, love, I believe, is at the root of it all.
Great, Madhu. And you know what? A few days back, I had an interview with someone. He was talking about something called intergenerational wounds. And his explanation was that there are wounds that are passing from people in the past. So I think it is clear that this is a practice that everyone can tap into. I think one of the easiest ways to practice empathy is sharing, because we want to share what we feel. We want to see then other people are safe, happy, and so forth. Okay, my last question to you is about the connection between these two, self-awareness and empathy, and why self-awareness is the first step toward empathy. So if someone wants to practice empathy, so the first step according to our topic is self-awareness. So how do you combine these two? How do you tell someone who is at the beginning of his or her empathy that self-awareness is your starting point? So how do we connect these two, and how do we tell people you're going to start from self-awareness and you are moving towards empathy, compassion, and become a better person?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, bringing right back to my previous answer, is the more you know yourself, the more you deepen that knowledge of yourself, the more you're able to relate to others. And I think what's important about all this is the suspension of judgment. So, for example, self-awareness means it's almost like metacognition, like thinking about thinking, like watching your thoughts or watching your reactions, even the reactions of your body. Where does anger sit in my body? Where does sadness sit? And just watching it without any judgment and allowing it and giving it space, and afterwards reflecting on it and then gleaning the insights from it. And then when you see somebody else maybe reacting the same way, or someone else acting from their wound, or someone maybe yelling or being violent, you're able to, of course, recognize good behavior versus bad behavior, acceptable behavior versus unacceptable behavior, but also recognize that that person may be acting from their wound, that person has a trigger that may go far deeper than the action that we're seeing or the reaction that we're seeing on the surface. And the more we're able to connect to someone's humanity versus their surface actions or their surface words, the more we're able to connect to what's deeper, the more that bond of humanity deepens, as I mentioned earlier. And so self-awareness is connected to empathy, because when the two come together, what blossoms out of that is love. What blossoms out of that is kindness. What blossoms out of that is acceptance. And at the end of the day, don't we all just want to be accepted? So very important, very, very important qualities, skills, very important life work.
That makes a lot of sense, Madhu. Okay, let me recap the whole discussion. And we were talking about why self-awareness is the first step toward empathy. And we first talked about what is self-awareness. Self-awareness is becoming more aware about oneself. And we also talked about two types of self-awareness. They are internal self-awareness and external self-awareness. Internal self-awareness means the same thing that we know by self-awareness, becoming more aware about our response, not reactions, because we are not supposed to react. Reactions are pretty dangerous. We have to, strategize, and we have to become more aware about our responses to events and people. While external self-awareness means empathy, clearly that's the name. So we are concerned about how other people look at us, but that leads to this big topic called empathy. So we are concerned about other people. That's why we are looking at them. And we also talked about benefits of self-awareness. There are a lot of benefits. We know that we will become better people in terms of understanding us and other people, because it's twofold. One is towards oneself, the other one towards the other being towards other people. And we're talking about how to become more self-aware. We talked about meditation, and Madhu also brought up something called contemplation, so analyzing one's beliefs and thought processes, because we need, at the end of the day, we should take time to look back, kind of do a review about how we spend the day. So it's more about more likely a contemplation. So there are different ways to be self-aware. And also, more importantly, when something happened, we always question that thing, that phenomenon, as to why the boss yelled at me, why he was mean to me, why he shouted at me. So the better way to look at it is, what situations made that person to become like this, what situations made me to be so looking at what perspective towards what happened, not why. So why is giving us more stress, more distress. So that's another way to become more self-aware. So meditation, contemplation, ask what instead of why. Spend time for you, at least 30 minutes a day, because you are in a very hectic life. We all are in a hectic life. People are always connected to outside internet, social media stuff. Take at least 30 minutes for you at the end of the day, so you can look at in a better way. Also become a better listener. That will help you to become more aware, because we like to talk a lot than listening to other people. If we listen more and talk less, there are few questions that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So these are things that we could do for becoming self-aware. And we also talked about what is empathy. Empathy is a smaller version of compassion, trying to feel what others suffer, go through, so that we are trying our best to help them. And we also talked about different ways to become empathetic. One of the ways is to step out of our comfort zone, so that we can see a larger picture, broader picture. It's like you are zooming out the incident. When you zoom out, you see the bigger picture. When you are too close to attach to that, you can't see that. So that's one way. And another thing that you could do to become more empathetic is to more exposed to different cultures. You can travel. You can develop yourself in a way so that you will understand other people, how they think differently, right? And there are things like that you could do. And also you can examine your biases, because we are biased in different ways. So we can look at our prejudices and biases, so that we can understand, where am I stuck in my thinking of not being empathetic towards other people, so I can make myself clear out of those biases. And then finally we talked about the connection between self-awareness and empathy, and why self-awareness is the starting point. And Madhu delineated that self-awareness is the starting point, because if you don't try to become aware about yourself, you will never be curious about what other people go through. That empathy will not arise in us anytime in the future. So when you become aware about yourself, and this is the same thing like in the loving kindness meditation, is you practice loving kindness to you first, and then you practice to your family members, relatives, friends, and all living beings. If you practice it to other people in the first place, you will never practice for you, because you never know how much you love towards yourself. If you know how much you love towards yourself, you know how much other people love them. So it's like the same analogy. So this is what we've been talking about, self-awareness, and Madhu brought up very nice, very wonderful ways, perspectives in this topic. Madhu, thank you so much. Thank you for accepting this invitation. And I hope that you will join a few more times in the future, whenever your time permits. Madhu is a copywriter in one of the advertising companies in Vancouver, and I know her for, I guess, 7-8 years. And but now I'm in Ottawa, so we don't have a regular connection. But I know she's doing well. She is also interested about theater and not even the copywriting. She has a wide variety of interest about life, and I hope she will continue, and hopefully you will come through all those plans. Thank you, Madhu, and thank you, our listeners and people who are watching this live discussion. And stay tuned with another episode. We'll be doing day 26 in a few days. Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.